Hello students, this is Usha Sharma. I will continue chapter 9, Kings and Chronicles. In the previous video, I explained these topics: Mughal dynasty, production of Mughal chronicles, brief description of Akbarnama and Badshahnaama, manuscripts, their language, painted image and calligraphy, and idol kingdom. Now I will start the topic Mughal capital. The heart of the Mughal Empire was its capital city. The capital cities of the Mughals were frequently shifted during the 16th and 17th century. When Babur brought the Lodi capital of Agra, the court was changed within 4 years of rule in the capitals. The fort of Agra was constructed by Akbar during 1560s with red stone. In the 1570s, he built a new capital, Fatehpur Sikri. It was located on the direct road to Ajmer, where the Dargah of Sheikh Muinuddin Chishti had become an important pilgrimage center. The Mughal emperors shared a close relationship with the Sufis of the Chishti Silsila. Akbar constructed a white marble tomb for Sheikh Salim Chishti near Friday Mosque at Sikri. Akbar commissioned the construction of Buland Darwaja to remind visitors of the Mughal victory in Gujarat. The capital was shifted to Lahore in 1585 in order to strengthen the control over northwest. Akbar monitored it closely for 13 years. Shah Jahan pursued sound fiscal policies and accumulated enough money to indulge his passion for building. Building activities in monarchical cultures was the most visible and tangible sign of dynasty power, wealth and prestige. In 1648, the capital was shifted to Shah Jahanabad. It was a new addition to the old residential city of Delhi with Red Fort, Jama Masjid and Chandni Chowk. The Mughal court. The Mughal emperor's court procedures reflected his status and power. The throne or takht was visualized as axis mundi, that is pillar or pole supporting the earth. Canopy was a symbol of kingship. The status of the courtiers was determined by special proximity to the king. Once the emperor sat on the throne, no one was permitted to move from his position. The forms of salutation. The forms of salutation were indicators of a person's status in the hierarchy. For example, deeper prostration was a symbol of higher status. Sijda or complete prostration was the highest form of submission. Next was Char Taslim and Jami Poshi. The diplomatic envoy also had to follow the norms of etiquette at the Mughal court. It was expected from an ambassador presented to the Mughal emperor that he would greet the emperor in an acceptable form of greeting. These forms were bowing deeply, kissing the ground, or following the Persian custom of clasping one hand in front of the chest. However, Thomas Roe, the English envoy of James I, greeted the Mughal emperors Jahangir according to European custom, that is simply bowing before him. Moreover, he shocked the court by demanding a chair for sitting. Daily routine and festivals connected with the Mughal court. The emperor began his day at sunrise with personal religious devotions and prayers. He appeared on a small balcony for Jharoka Darshan in the morning. A crowd of people waited for the darshan of the emperor. Akbar introduced this practice of Jharoka Darshan. After that, the emperor walked to the public hall of audience to conduct the primary business of his government. State official presented report and made request. After that, the emperor was in the Diwan-e-Khas to hold private audience and discuss confidential matter. High ministers placed their petitions before him in Diwan-e-Khas. Tax officials presented their accounts, reputed artists presented their work, and buildings plan of the architect were viewed by the emperor. On special occasions such as the anniversary of accession to the throne, Eid, Shab-e Barat and Holi, the court was full of life. Mughal rulers celebrated three festivals a year, the solar and lunar birthday of the king and Nowruz. The king was weighed against the commodities on his birthday and they were distributed in charity. Perfumed candles set in rich holders and palace walls festooned with colorful hangings made by tremendous impressions on visitors. Emperor adopted high-sounding and rhythmic titles which were announced by user in the court and they created an atmosphere of awe in the audience. Titles and gifts. The Mughal adopted grand titles at the time of coronation or victory in the war. These titles were mentioned on the Mughals' coin. The Mughals granted titles to men of merit. The title Asaf Khan was given to highest ministers. The Asaf Khan came from a legendary minister of the Prophet King Suleiman. The title of Mirza Raja was accorded by Aurangzeb to his two nobles of merit, for example, Jai Singh and Jaswant Singh. The titles could be earned or paid. For example, Mir Khan paid rupees 1 lakh to Aurangzeb for the letter Alif to be added to his name to make it Amir Khan. Other awards included Robe of Honor, which was a garment worn by the emperor, sarappa, tunic, sash and jewelry were given by the emperor. On a rare occasion, the lotus blossom set with jewel was given. A courtier, while approaching the emperor, he offered either a small sum of money or a large amount. Offering gifts was regarded as a sign of honor and respect in diplomatic relations. The ambassadors performed the functions of negotiated treaties and establishing relationship between competing political powers. In such cases, gifts had an important symbolic role. Thomas Roe, an English ambassador, was disappointed to find that the ring presented by him as a gift of Asaf Khan was returned as it was worth merely 400 rupees. The royal household. The domestic world of the Mughal was referred to as harem. It is a Persian word meaning a sacred place. Harem consisted of the wives of emperors and concubines, his relatives and other family members. It also had servants, both male and female slaves. The Mughal rulers maintained a distinction between wives with aristocratic background called begums and other wives called agha, who were not noble by birth. The begums were married by the emperor after giving huge amount of cash and other precious things as dowry. Concubines were given monthly allowances and gifts according their status. The agha and agachas could rise to the position of a begum depending upon the husband's will. There were a number of male and female slaves in the Mughal household. They performed various tasks which required skill, tact and intelligence. Role of Mughal princes in commerce. After Noor Jahan, the queens of Mughals rulers and princes began to control important official resources. Jahan Ara and Roshan Ara, the daughters of Shah Jahan, had annual incomes often equal to that of high imperial mansabdars. Besides, Jahan Ara received revenue from the port city of Surat, which was a big center of overseas trade. The resources enabled important women of the royal household to get constructed building and lay out gardens. Contribution of Mughal princes in the field of architecture. Jahan Ara took special interest in many architectural projects of Shah Jahan in founding new capital, Shah Jahanabad. Among these projects was the construction of imposing double-storied Karwa Sarai, the Bazaar of Chandni Chowk, The main center of trade in Shahjahanabad was designed by Jahan Ara. Contribution of Mughal princes in the field of literature. Humayun's daughter Gulbadan wrote an interesting book giving glimpse of domestic world of the Mughals. She could write fluently in Turkish and Persian. When Akbar ordered Abul Fazl to write a history of his region, he requested his aunt to record her memories of earlier times under Babur and Humayun. Gulbadan did not write the eulogy of the Mughal emperors. She rather described the conflicts and tensions among the princes and kings and the mediating role of the elderly women of the family played in resolving some of these conflicts. Recruitment of imperial officials in the Mughal Empire. The Akbarnama of Abul Fazl provides detailed information about the recruitments of imperial officials, the corps of officers known as nobility in the Mughal Empire was recruited from diverse ethnic and religious groups in order to prevent any faction that would challenge the state. The imperial officers were described by the court historians as a bouquet of flowers, Guldasta. During the rule of Akbar, for the imperial service, Iranian and Turani nobles were recruited. The two groups of Indian nobles in the Mughal Empire. Two ruling groups of Indian origin entered the imperial service from 1560 onward, the Rajputs and the Indian Muslims. The first to join was a Rajput chief Raja Bharmal Kachwaha of Amber, to whose daughter Akbar got married. Aurangzeb appointed Rajput to high position and under him the Marathas accounted for a considerable number within the body of officers. Mansabdari system. The recruited officer for the service in the Mughal Empire were given ranks with two numerical designations, Jat and Sawar. Jat, which was an indicator of the position in the imperial hierarchy and the salary of the official. Another term used to indicate the number of horsemen was Sawar. In the 17th century, a Mansabdar with 1000 Jat was ranked as noble. Nobles and their military services to the king. The nobles sent their armies and participated in the military campaign and served in the offices of the empire in the provinces. The military commander recruited, equipped and trained the main wing of the Mughal army. He maintained horses which were branded on the flank by the imperial mark. By serving in the imperial offices, the nobles acquired power, wealth and reputation. Selection of a person to the military service. A person who wanted to enter in service petitions to the emperor through a noble. If his application was selected, a mansab was granted to him. The Mir Bakshi stood in the open court nearby the emperor and gave away the appointments or promotions order which had its office, seal and signature as well as those of the emperor. There were two other important ministers at the center, the Diwan-e-Ala, Sadr-us-Sudur and Madad-e-Mash. The three ministers occasionally came together as an advisory body but were independent to each other. Akbar with these and other advisors shaped an administrative, fiscal and monetary institution of the empire. Documentation of court proceedings. The keeping of exact and detailed record was a major concern of the Mughal administration. The Mir Bakshi supervised the corps of court writers who recorded all applications and documents presented to the court and all imperial orders. Agents of nobles and regional rulers recorded the entire proceeding of the court under the heading News from the Exalted Court, with the date of the court session. The Akhbarat contain all kind of information such as attendance at the court, grants of others and titles, diplomatic missions, presents received or the inquiries made by the emperor about the health of an officer. News reports and important official documents traveled across the length and breadth of the region under Mughal rule by imperial post. Round the clock relay of foot runners carried paper rolled up in bamboo containers. The emperor received report from even distant provincial capital within few days. Agents of noble posted outside the capital and Rajput princes and tributary rulers. Provincial administration of the Mughal. The administration system of the provinces also had the same method like that of the center. In the provinces, ministers were assisted by their subordinates such as Diwan, Bakshi and Sadr. The governor or the subedar was the head of the provincial administration. He had to report to the emperor directly. Each suba was divided into sarkars with the jurisdiction of fauzdar. The local administration was looked after at the level of Pargana by three officers, the Kanungo, the Chaudhry and the Qazi. The administration of each department was maintained by many staff of clerk, accountants, auditor, messengers and other functionaries with good technical skills with highly standardized rules and procedures. Persian was the language of administration, but local language were used for village administration. Beyond the frontiers, diplomatic relations of the Mughal emperors. The Mughal emperors assumed many high-sounding titles such as Shahenshah. The title adopted by individual kings were such as Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Alamgir. These titles indicate the claims of the Mughal emperors to uncontested territorial and political control. The contemporary historians in their accounts describe the political relations and conflict of the Mughal rulers with their neighboring political powers. First, Kandahar. The fortress town of Kandahar was always a bone of contention between the Safavis of Iran and the Mughals. Initially, Kandahar had been in the possession of Humayun. It was reconquered by Akbar in 1595. While the Safavid rulers staked claims on Kandahar, but they did not break their diplomatic relations with the Mughals. Jahangir sent a diplomatic mission to the court of Shah Abbas, the ruler of Iran, to plead the case for retaining Kandahar, but the mission returned disappointed. In 1622, the Safavid ruler of Iran recovered Kandahar. Ottomans. The Mughals' relations with Ottomans were marked by the concern to ensure free movements for merchants and pilgrims in the territories under Ottoman control. It was especially true of Hajj, which was situated in the Ottoman Arabia where Mecca and Medina were located. The Mughal rulers combined religion and commerce by exporting valuable articles of Adan and Mocha. Both Red Sea ports and distributed proceeds of the seals in charity to the keepers of shrines and religious. Visit of the Jesuit to the Mughal court. With the discovery of a new sea route to India at the end of the 15th century, Portuguese merchants were able to establish trading stations in Indian coastal cities. The King of Portugal was interested in trade with India as well as in spreading Christianity with the help of missionaries of the Society of Jesus. During the 16th century, the missionaries came to India. Mughal Emperor Akbar was interested in knowing about Christianity and dispatched an embassy to Goa to invite Jesuit priests. The missions of Jesuits under the leadership of monasteries visited the Mughal court in 1580 at Fatehpur Sikri. The Jesuits discussed with Akbar about the virtues of Christianity and with the ulama. Two more missions visited in the Mughal court at Lahore in 1591 and 1595. The Jesuits wrote their accounts based on their personal observation and gave detailed information about the character and mind of the emperor. They were given very close seat very near to the emperors at public assemblies. They went along with the emperor at the time of campaign and accompanied him during his leisure time. Questioning the formal religion. Akbar participated in the debates held in the Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri in order to have a clear understanding of religions. Debates were between learned Muslim, Hindus, Jainas, Parsis and Christians. Akbar's religious view matured by questioning the scholars of different religion and sect and gathered knowledge about their doctrines. In course of time, he moved away from the orthodox Islamic way of understanding religion and followed a self-conceived electric form of worship focusing on light and the sun. He also founded a new religion, Deen-e Ilahi. Thank you, class.